I'm here with Chris Anderson.
Hello.
We are going to show you how to implement SSO using Opendock.
Opendock SSO.
Opendock SSO.
Here you go. We're going to stumble through it together and hopefully make it easier for you guys.
Yeah.
So should I give like a little SSO overview real quick? All right. So the SSO system in Opendock uses what's called SAML 2.0, SAML 2.0. You don't really need to know the details necessarily, but it is important to know that that's the protocol we're using. It's very old. A lot of companies use it. It's not, anything that complicated, but there's a little bit of terminology to know. One of them is something called a service provider or an SP, and that's usually the app that you're trying to log into. So in this case, Opendock will be the service provider or SP. The other term is something called an IDP, which is the identity provider. That's the thing that has the users for your organization. It stores passwords and user information, and it's the thing that's sort of authenticating you into that service provider. For the purposes of this video, we're going to show you how to do this with Microsoft Azure AD, but you can use any IDP out there that supports SAML 2.0.
Cool. All right, so we're in Opendock Nova here. Where do I go to get started?
Okay, so you're going to want to go to My Organization, and you're going to want to click on the SSO Config tab. And this is really the only place you have to go to set up SSO in Opendock. You'll notice there's a entry here that says IDP metadata URLs. That's kind of confusing to start, but really this is the URL from your IDP, in this case Azure AD, that's going to allow Opendock to say, hey, what's all the details about your SSO setup, right? It's going to query that basically. So that's something we'll grab from Azure. We'll show you how to do that. Paste that in here. We'll explain these options as well, the SSO enabled and the forbid. And then down below, this is information sort of going the other way. So this is Opendock service provider saying, here's our metadata. Because that's really how it works. It's an exchange of metadata where the two systems agree on, how to talk to each other. And so the two key things here are the entity ID and the assertion consumer location, right? Now, one confusing thing is the terminology for these things can be different depending on the IDP. There's official SAML terminology, and then Microsoft has their own. It gets a little confusing. We'll try to explain that a little bit, though, as we go through the example. But those two pieces of information in that metadata URL are the only thing that your IDP should need from Opendock. And so all that's available for you here on this page. But we'll come back to this.
Okay.
So probably we should jump over to Azure, actually, and get started on that side.
Okay.
And we're not Azure AD experts, just to be transparent, but we're gonna do our best. And definitely, your IT professional probably knows more than we do, and they can do this the totally correct way. But we're gonna give you at least one example of how to set this up. Okay. So first is to get into Azure AD. You've logged into your Azure account. You need to go to Azure AD. So maybe I think it's that little hamburger menu. And then how do we get to
Active Directory?
There you go, Azure Active Directory.
Cool.
Great. All right. So here we are in Active Directory. Now, one thing is, so from the point of view of Active Directory or any IDP, it sees Opendock as a service provider. Another term is like an app or an external app, right? So we need to set up this external app within your system here.
Right.
And for Azure, I believe it's Enterprise Applications is where you want to go. And let's go ahead and make a new application up at the top. And there's a gallery of applications, right? But we're not in the gallery. We probably should get Opendock added to the gallery, but it's not going to be any of these pre-made ones. It's going to be like a custom one. So I think it's that create your own app. Okay, great. And here you go. And so Opendock. Awesome. Now, what are you configuring? What are you looking to do with your application? Configure application proxy. Okay, I think it's that third one. It's the default. And we're going to integrate another app that's not in the gallery.
Okay. Click create.
Click create. Okay, great. This is good. So this is your control panel for the Opendock app within your Azure AD setup, right? And so you can see on the left there's a few things. There's users and groups, and there's single sign-on. Single sign-on is SSO, of course. So go ahead and click on that. And then you can see SAML is an option. You're going to want to use SAML, right? And now here's where we're going to configure things. Now you see right off the bat in that basic SAML configuration, see how it says identifier and then parentheses entity ID? Okay, that's an important piece of information we need to give to Azure from Opendock, okay? So yeah, go ahead and click edit. And let's see, I guess entity ID at the top, identifier entity ID, that's the first one we need. So go click add, great. Okay, you need it though. So let's go grab it from Opendock. You can see right there, we've got entity ID, and then we have a little handy copy button there. So you can go ahead and copy it real quick. Paste that in there. Great. Okay. And then the other one is going to be, you'll see right below that, it says reply URL in parentheses, assertion consumer service URL. So again, there's multiple terms for the same thing, but this is what Opendock calls an assertion consumer location, right? So that's why there's that second one there. And I know it doesn't match perfectly, but that's because there's many different IDPs that use different terminology. So we're trying to kind of split the difference between SAML standards. Everyone does it slightly differently. So sorry for the confusion there, but that's how those two map together. And so great. Those are the two important things to put in here. I think that's it for this page. So go ahead and click save on the basic SAML config. Takes a second. Great. All right. Now, another thing we're going to need is claims, and they call them attributes and claims, which are basically the same thing. This is sort of like, if you scroll up a little there, it's section 2. There you go. So claims or attributes are basically data you can attach when it tries to do the SSO. It'll send this data as well on top of kind of the basic stuff. You can see, Azure has these defaults like given name, surname, email address, name, and unique user identifier. But Opendock specifically requires you have a claim called email that has the user's email, right? So we'll show you how to do that. That email address one, Opendock doesn't know how to read that. So we have to add a custom one here. So the way you do that is you go to add new claim and you just type the word email. It has to be exactly email. So Opendock can recognize it. And then down below, attribute is correct. And then the source attribute, this is telling Azure where to grab the data from. It's going to be user.mail. Now, if your Azure setup is different, where their email is stored in some other field, you're going to want to pick that field because it's important to know, whatever email is in the user account in Active Directory, that needs to match the email of the user in Opendock. That's how we kind of connect those two users together. And so here we're creating a claim that's going to pass through the user.mail from the user account in Azure over to Opendock. And that's where Opendock will know where to grab it. So go ahead and hit save. Great. And you can see the claim there, email. And it's going to send through the user.mail value, which is great. Okay, so you can hit the X in the upper right and we go back. So now we have our claim. And if you forget to do stuff like that, our error messages should guide you through and let you know what you're missing. But all right. Now there's one other thing, which is signing security stuff. I think it's under SAML certificates. So go ahead and hit edit on that. I forget if it's in there or not. Good. Okay, so it defaults to SHA-256 algorithm, which is fine. Don't have to change it. In theory, we support both, but that one's better, I think. Signing option, go ahead and open that up. You see how it defaults to sign SAML assertion? We need that to be response and assertion. Opendock will reject it without that. So go ahead and hit save. We like things nice and secure as much as possible, right? Okay, great. All right, so that's most of it. Now, in theory, we could, what I forgot is we need to make sure that Opendock has the metadata URL for your Azure. So you remember that field there? Where do we get that from, right? Because Opendock won't even know how to talk to Azure until it has that. So let's go back to your Azure. Let's scroll up a little bit. I have to remind myself where to get this. It's not there. Scroll down.
This one?
This would be hard to find without some guidance. And I think we have this in our documentation, but it says Federation Metadata XML. I think if you just were to click download, that would be wrong because that'll download a file. And no, it's okay. So you can download the XML and look at it if you want, but we do it dynamically. And so we don't have you load XML files in Opendock. Instead, Opendock will fetch it. So it needs a URL. And if you look, it says App Federation Metadata URL. That's the one Opendock wants because Opendock will dynamically fetch that metadata. So it's the most up to date. So we think that's a better way to do it than static files. Paste it in. Paste that in. And it looks a little crazy, but it looks good to me. And go ahead and hit save. Now, one thing I'll point out right now is that you see that little SSO enabled is no. It's a little bit confusing. What this means is that you're not set. When it's no, it means you're not saying the SSO is ready for your whole org. But that doesn't mean you can't test it. And you see right there it says testing only. So even with it not fully enabled, we can at least test it first. And then, because the moment you switch SSO enabled to yes, then it will change Opendock to where basically all new users that you invite, they won't get an email or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
They will, in fact, just be added. And then the first time that user SSO is in, their email will be verified, right? So we skip that whole
So
thing.
they won't receive the invite email and they won't receive the password reset email.
Correct. They won't be able to reset a password. That's right.
Okay.
Now, in your case, Calissa, one question I have is the user in your Azure account, is that email already in use in Opendock yet? If not, well, I guess it doesn't really matter. We just need to make sure that user exists in here. So what's the email of your Azure user, I guess would be my question.
It's mycalissa@gmail, which I don't think is in here.
You don't have it in here? So this is good to show. So by default, SSO requires that you go ahead and create the user in Opendock manually and manage their role and their warehouse restrictions on the Opendock side.
Okay.
And the only thing it provides is that SSO ability, and the emails have to match, right? We do have a provisioning system where you can have Opendock dynamically create that user and update their data from your IDP. And we'll show that in a follow-up video, but we're going to keep it simple for now and show you the system without without provisioning, because it's a little bit more complex. Okay. So let's do it the kind of straightforward way. So you will need to create that user. We could try SSOing in and show what happens when the user's not there. Maybe that would be good.
Or maybe that user is assigned to a different org.
Yeah, either way, it'll fail. Okay. So let's go ahead and make it fail. The way to test is you click test. Now, one thing I should point out here is that what we're testing here is what's called IDP initiated login. And that means that, and this is how Opendock SSO works. You don't go to the Opendock website to SSO in, right? Okay. You go to your IDP. So if it's Azure AD, you start there. If it's Okta, you start there. Whatever your IDP is, you have to start there. Every IDP will provide you either an app login URL, which we can show you how to get that for Azure, or usually they'll provide like a dashboard of apps that you can just click on. And that's the way that we expect you to SSO into Opendock. If you go to Opendock's regular login page, you won't be able to log in anyway, and it doesn't redirect to your IDP or anything like that. That's called SP, or service provider initiated login. We just don't support that because generally customers, they have 15 different apps. They want you to start on the dashboard that your IT team is providing you. Okay. So that's a little bit more valuable that way. But anyway, this test here will simulate that. This will simulate that your user clicked on, the app in their Azure dashboard, right? So let's go ahead and try it. Okay. And this will use your logged in Azure account there. We can test other accounts. If you add users to your Azure, you can have them log in and try this. Okay, so this didn't work. And this is a helpful error here. It says your administrator has configured the application Opendock to block users unless they're specifically granted access. So this is an Azure specific thing. This has nothing to do with Opendock, but we can go ahead and show what to do here. So this means, in Azure, in Azure, when you add an application like we did, you have to grant access to users. And there's all kinds of settings. And again, we're not Azure experts, but there's ways of making it where users can add themselves, or you can have your IT administrators do it, but we'll do it the easy way here. So go ahead and go to users and groups. And I think you need to add your user to this app. So let's go ahead and just add your Calissa user. Microsoft makes this a little complicated, but go ahead and do none selected. Maybe click that. There we go. Click Calissa, hit select, and then click assign. So however you set up your organization, you just need to make sure your users have access to this app that you're setting up, right? And that can be different depending on your business and how your IT department operates. So don't think you have to do it the exact same way. Okay. Did it work?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but...
Oh, there we go.
Now, hopefully... it failed.
Fail.
Weird. Okay, why don't you click on that? Calissa Pollard failed. Why did it fail? Maybe click on the thing? Oh, it just failed for no apparent reason. So maybe we edit this part of the video out, but go ahead and try it again. That's really weird. Click add user again.
Where?
Right. No,
sorry.
It's okay. Click add user. You should be able to add users to your app. I don't know why that failed. Go ahead and click assign. It worked that time. Yay, Microsoft. Very reliable. Okay, so you have now added your user. Now, you can create a group, of course, that has access to the app, and then you can add users to that group. It's really depending on how you guys want to operate your IT setup here. But you have to, have some sort of access to the application.
Yeah. Okay, so we can try testing.
Let's try it again. Yeah, let's give it another shot. You have to be patient getting SSO working, but once it's working, oh, great. Okay, so now when you see that orange Opendock SAML SSO error text, that means that it successfully went from Azure AD into Opendock, and then Opendock is saying there's something wrong. So that's a good sign. You should be happy to get this error message, right? Now, what's it saying? Please user does not have access to this org. Okay, that tells us that this Calissa@gmail.com does not exist in your org. So let's go look at your org. And just like you said, I don't think that user's in here yet. All right, so you need to add your user. So go ahead and do that. And again, remember this must match the email in the user account in your IDP. Last name, oh, Calissa Gmail. Cool, cool name. All right, so she's going to set herself up as an admin. There you go. And you'll notice, now, one thing is that because we didn't turn SSO on, we didn't enable it, it did send an email invite, right? And so normally you wouldn't want to do that for, if you're adding your users to your org here, you would want to turn SSO on and you want to enable it, and then you invite them and they don't get any email. They just log in from Azure, right? And maybe we could demonstrate that. Like, could you delete that user?
Yeah.
And we'll try it again with the enabled turn on. And again, you can do this to test, and you can, when SSO is set up, you can, if you have a password, you can still log in with that password, but you can also SSO in.
Right.
Unless you restrict it, which we'll show you later. But let's go ahead and do SSO enabled because we think everything's set up correctly. And now when you go to invite a user, so let's try that again. That user should not get any sort of email or anything like that. There's no reason to set a password. Okay, so now you've got your user created. And so let's try to SSO in again this time. It should work this time, hopefully. And there you are. You're logged in as Calissa Pollard.
And I'm an admin.
And you're an admin. So SSO is now working. And that's kind of it. Yeah. It's not that bad. If you guys run into other error messages that we're not explaining in this video, look at our documentation or send us an email. We'll help you walk through it. Now, there is an extra feature here. Oh, yeah, you should show that they can get to the docs real easily right there. And hopefully this has everything you need in detail. And we do have a Azure-specific section where we give you some extra tips there. Hopefully that's helpful. Now, Calissa, if you go back to Opendock, there is another setting here, though, which is the forbid password logins. So some customers have asked, can we make it so they can our users can only log in with SSO? And that's why we added this feature. If you switch that on, it will prevent anyone from logging in using a password, and they can't reset their password either because it doesn't really make sense. There's one exception, and that's users with the owner role.
Yeah.
And we did that for two reasons. One, an escape hatch, so you're not locked out in case your SSO configuration gets messed up somehow. Right. And also for API integrations, because our API requires that you have a user account and it doesn't know how to SSO. It doesn't really make sense for a robot. So yeah, that's kind of it for SSO.
Okay.
That's all you need, I think. Obviously, on the Azure side, you would want to, set up an app on the dashboard for the users, and then it's really easy to click through. But these are the basics. That's all you need.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris.
Of course.
This will be awesome.
All right.
More questions, feel free to look at the documentation as we showed you here.
Yes.
Or reach out to support@opendock.com and we can help answer any other questions after that.
Yep. That sounds good. And we'll do a follow-up video to talk about provisioning.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.